Why are our cities so ugly? And why should you care?
40% have mental health problems. 4 out of 10 is crazy.
A lot of studies show us that the absence of nature and beauty makes us more and more depressed. When you go outside, you see a concrete jungle. You see grey buildings, the absence of color.
Egos of the architect can be inflated endlessly to build whatever they want and impose that on other people and ruin their day with an ugly building that people have to see every day of their life for 50 years.
But how can we change it? How can we make it better? Can we hope for a better future? Well, that is the main mission of my guest today, Ruben Hanssen, the man behind the aesthetic city.
How can a concrete and glass facade make you unhealthy? Well, it strongly affects the experience at street level. They don't feel safe. That will lead to stress. Stress is enormously unhealthy. If you build a place where everything is human scaled and you feel enclosed, it's a pleasant place to be. You can reduce stress. And that is one of the many mechanisms to improve your health. So I think there needs to be far more research into this.
So expect to learn today about why our cities are more and more ugly. Why is it important? How can we make it better? The importance of color in architecture and much more. Ladies and gentlemen, parlons d'architecture. Ruben Hanssen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'll be blunt. Why are our cities ugly today, and why does it matter?
It's a long story. I think we can trace it all back, of course, to the rise of the Industrial Revolution, where we suddenly got new construction methods, and we got all these also new. Well, we got cities with horrible living circumstances. First of all, we were living in overcrowded cities, there was pollution, and at the turn of the 20th century, well, there were really bad living circumstances and they were looking for solutions. And well, then with the First World War and all these new visions of art and architecture, also came another way of building, a way of building that really embraced these new industrial ways of building buildings. And it was a very revolutionary time, and part of this new idea of building buildings, modernism, was also to throw away all the old and to just do away with tradition because it had failed in their eyes. They had a First World War that killed millions, completely destroying the ideas and the faith in the old order, and all these exciting new materials, and they really thought we're going into a new age. But they threw the baby out with the bathwater, because there were actually a lot of things that were actually working, that did work well, and they threw them away, but they actually threw away something that had merit. A little example I always like to give is the idea of a cornice, which is like a ledge on the top of a building. And they thought, well, it's like a kind of like a crown, and well, that's not revolutionary, so it has to be got out.
Yeah.
We have to scrap it. No more cornices. But cornices actually have a function. They keep rainwater from dripping over the facade, keeping facades clean and beautiful. And I was in Lisbon this year, and there was a building in front of our Airbnb, and it had not only didn't have a cornice, but it had a facade that curved up, in a rounded shape. So it was so dirty. You saw all the dark schmutz just from rainwater and dirt all collected on the top, and it just looked horrible. And then next to it was an old building with a nice cornice, and you saw just a clean facade, and you saw exactly how a cornice works and how that. So how that happened. Well, of course, after the Second World War, this way of building, modernism, that also, that kind of completely contrasted with how we had built for millennia, became seen as the answer, and kind of the democratic Western way of building. It became seen as the progressive, forward-looking way of building, and it was successfully instated in all universities, for example, by by a lot of Bauhaus professors who fled from Germany and, well, they settled in the United States. And for example, Walter Gropius, the founder of the Bauhaus, he became, I think, a director or associate director or something at the Harvard School of Architecture. So they completely changed their way of teaching, which was already, by the way, a process that had been put in motion before that time and at Harvard specifically. But there was like a wave of, let's say, modernism was being adopted in all architecture schools because they collectively believed, well, it was a big push, first of all, but it was also kind of a movement of the times that they thought, we are done with the Beaux-Arts tradition. We don't need all these watercolors anymore. We're going to throw out all the casts of traditional buildings which our students are studying. Hand drawing has to be different. And they all adopted this Bauhaus way of designing. And this meant that this revolution was finally finished around the early 70s in all universities. And from that moment on, this way of building was basically installed as de facto way of building everywhere. And it was such a successful revolution, let's say, or coup, that, there was basically competition was completely destroyed. All the little craftsmen who made ornaments and little factories who made ornament, because that was made, by a lot of little companies and craftsmen, but also workshops who actually mass produced, molds and casts and stucco, and they all went bankrupt. They had to be reschooled, and it was basically a complete clearing of the field, and this new way of building was victorious. But that is the problem is that this new way of building wasn't very popular from the very beginning, because its shapes, it's focused on horizontality, its raw minimalist aesthetic. It didn't provide people with their preference for natural forms, for complexity, for detail. Of course, you had Adolf Loos with his manifesto against ornament. Well, that was very effective too, because ornament was really banned. But people still like ornaments. And that is something, there is something very deep in humans that likes natural forms. And I think that's also why why many people like Zaha Hadid's work with all the flowing, fluid forms, because it reminds us of nature. Probably that's one of the most probable explanations. And people like this structured order and this hierarchy in a facade, and what classical architecture offers. And so white matters, our cities, but they became uglier because there was a lot of contrast with these new buildings that did not mix well with the old, because they did not build on the same principles as the old. They rejected those principles outright and on principle, and therefore it could never really adopt any of those things. Although that stage has now kind of is kind of, we're entering a new stage, I think, also with modernism, because more and more architects are experimenting with traditional forms, and they are learning from traditions. You see it in Iran, for example, where you see a lot of interesting brickwork facades, and you see more arches appearing. So they're playing with those ideas, and I think it's also because it's a very limited toolkit if you can only work with the shapes that high modernism allowed. But we have all this whole development, and at some point you get more and more buildings that don't respond to what people naturally like, and you get areas that are alienating. And here we land in the part why it matters, is that we get city districts where people don't feel at home, and we create places that aren't really places, they're just spaces. They feel dead. They don't feel safe. They don't feel pleasant. You don't want to go there. You want to go away there. A great example is the Utrecht University campus, the Uithof, or the Utrecht Science Campus, where 40% of the students living there have mental health problems. 40% is, if you walk across the street there,
huge.
4 out of 10 is crazy.
Wow.
And if you walk around there, of course, it doesn't have all to do with the built environment. A lot does, because they all live in little studios in horrifically ugly buildings, far away from the city. There's nothing to do. There's only one little cafe for students, but yeah, there's not like the hustle and bustle. It's like a tower in the park kind of development with all these horrifically ugly buildings in some sort of a campus-like district, but not beautiful, and there's nothing else to do. So they're isolated. They're far away from the city where it happens, where life happens. And it's so crushingly ugly. Like it's just a whole other level.
Yeah.
Ugly.
It's like it's a pure machine, no identity, nothing that makes it special to the location it is.
Yes, it could be anywhere. It doesn't have anything to do with Utrecht, and it has one of the student homes is like, I think it's the ugliest building I know, just like of anywhere. Like it's I need to show you a picture of this, because you'll probably agree. But anyway, like the whole point is that we are creating such places while there is an alternative that is more livable. And if only they would learn from what makes the city center of Utrecht attractive and pleasant, and apply those lessons to this new district, there would not be a single problem. But there is a sort of foolhardiness and a sort of stubbornness, and no, they want to force the future, and they want to force it in a way that nobody loves. And they keep building these things which they think kind of bring us into a bright new world, but it doesn't bring us into a bright new world. It brings us into a dystopia. And I think the point is, you can ask the people what they like, and you will get this answer. And there is a huge gap between architects and the people, because they're not designing what people like.
Yeah, it's something that when I talk to other architects or to family members and people that don't know about architecture, it's a thing I discovered when I launched my YouTube channel. I call it the curse of knowledge. Well, it's not from me, but it's a very known principle, is that we, as architects, we begin to learn so much about modernity, about architecture, about the 5 principles of modern architecture, that we begin to forget that who we are designing for. Who are we designing for? And I think that's the question that more and more architects forget, but also more and more architects are maybe thinking to put that question at the center of their practice.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a very good point. That's the design disconnect, as for example, the bridge placemaking company and design office, Create Streets, knows it, or calls it. So the design disconnect is this gap between designers and laypersons. And actually, I found quite some research on this. I mean, it's a well-known fact. Like it's very clear in data. There's a lot of research into this. It's a real thing. But I think that it has to do with, like, anything you're going to learn a lot about, you're going to probably value more, because there's also like a time investment, and there is, of course, there is a sort of beauty to this minimalism, like it is also a sort of taste which you can really start to appreciate. And I think it is a form of learned taste. But what I also think is that if you, those who study classical architecture, I think they start, of course, they maybe get a taste for that kind of architecture. But I think the solution would be to make it fair, to make sure that students don't only learn about traditional, about modernism, but also about vernacular architecture and about classical architecture. They get the full package, and then they can choose. I think it's only fair, because it's like, modernist architecture is not the only part of the world. There's more out there. And of course they get some architectural history, but they don't learn the practice of how to make new traditional architecture.
Oh,
Except for very,
Yeah, I had like I did my studies in Paris,
Yeah.
and knew nothing about architecture. My first introduction was the work of Tadao Ando.
Oh yeah.
So in my mind, like everything had to be very new, very modern. And we had a history class, but the history class focused briefly on ancient history, like Mesopotamia, and then the Greeks and the Roman. But it was very brief. We
Yeah.
really had courses about modernism,
Mhm.
about the Cold War, about the work of Le Corbusier. It was very focused on that, and never have I never learned from school. I never learned from school like proportion,
Yeah.
the golden number, um,
Yeah.
uh, the Doric system, the Ionic system. We just saw them on a PowerPoint, one image, and that's it. We never learned about that, and I think it's a bit of a shame. And it's a nice transition because I heard, you recently published one of podcast episode where you talked about the episode of the black fence, and maybe you can talk about that a bit.
Yeah, yeah. We got to redesign or do a project in an area where there was this park with kind of like a little bit of a dilapidated but still historical area with a park in the middle, and a big black fence, a very ugly black fence. And that black fence was, I think it just dragged the whole area down because with a little bit more little bit nicer, um, yeah, let's say, detailing of the public space, that whole area could actually start to feel chic, and I feel it would uplift everyone. So that was my
Mm.
point. Let's put some nice, a nice fence in, some nice lantern posts, and um, because it was such a long time ago, I thought that they were reacting rather a bit strangely to my suggestion because, huh, beautiful stuff. Why would you do that? And they found it kind of a bit funny. But yeah, yesterday I learned that actually I think we have actually implemented it, but it was like, okay, we'll give Ruben his fence, to shut me up, okay, you get your fence. Um, so, but still, there was kind of like a weird, like there wasn't the understanding that it's a holistic, that urban design and aesthetics really go hand in hand. And that even the detailing of public space can make a big difference on how you experience an area. And that's one of the things nowadays with this minimalism that is, well, it's everywhere. It's like most of the new, lantern posts, or except for like in historical areas where there is some sort of a design code, you will always see like those very tight minimalist lantern posts. But there is something with these complex natural forms and foliage and ornament mm, that can make it feel more uplifting. And well, it's it's our biophilia, our love for nature that is activated there. Um, but I think yeah, I think this is something that's overlooked, and that was something interesting, and I keep touching on it as like an example of this difference in mindset that, I was very focused on this beauty aspect, and that was not really, yeah, apparent there in university.
A point you made, which I found interesting, is that beauty is not enough in architecture school. When you bring up the concept of beauty, you're instantly frowned upon. It's like you just said a bad word. Huh, why do we talk about a beauty? Beauty is useless. It's subjective. Got I got this comment the other day on one of my video. It's like,
Oh yeah.
what are you talking about? Beauty is subjective. And as a matter of fact, we kind of found that beauty can be engineered mathematically. It's a kind of a game of proportion, nature, organic shapes, and everything.
Yeah, if beauty is so subjective, why does everybody go to the same places, like to have their holidays, to why does everybody take Instagram pictures in front of some buildings and not in front of others? Why do people um, want to, like spend more money on a certain house than on another house. Like maybe beauty is indeed like somewhat subjective, but I think there's definitely a part of it that is more objective than people might think. And it doesn't show on the personal level. It shows on the aggregate, on the larger scale. You see patterns emerging.
Yeah.
And that is what is being ignored easily. And then they can say, yeah, but it's populist. Well, shouldn't we listen a bit to what, like, isn't it totalitarian on the other hand, to do what only a small group of people like? Um, I think we should always listen a little bit to what people want. Otherwise you risk getting, a complete chaos. But like the alternative is, of course, not that we're going to build exactly what everybody wants, because then you get, well, what in Belgium, that people hire their own architects and you get the ugly Belgian houses, uh, with, with the weirdest like castles and yeah, which is kind of that happens there because, well, everybody can basically build what they want. Um, I think there's still a role for expertise, but um, yeah, I think there should be yeah, that gap between designers and the public needs to be filled, because there is so much evidence that people like certain things and that is good for them, and that we see also a lot of research that there's actually, yeah, like health. It is detrimental to your health if you live in an alienating place. And really, like, maybe you think like, yeah, how can a concrete and glass facade make you unhealthy? Well, imagine an urban district where all the facades are super cold and alienating, and there's like maybe that little piece of facade is not going to make the difference, but if you have it in an ensemble of buildings and it strongly affects the experience at street level where people experience the street, that is going to influence how they behave. It's going to influence how often they go out, maybe to take a walk, if they even want to go on a walk, if they feel safe there. If they don't feel safe, that will lead to stress. Stress is enormously unhealthy. If you build a place where everything is human scaled and you feel enclosed and it's a pleasant place to be, you can reduce stress, and that is one of the many mechanisms to improve your health. So I think there needs to be far more research into this. Of course, we now have we have like a hunch, but it hasn't been a real big area of study and research. And I think this would be super interesting to do more academic research into, like how does a certain area affect you, and maybe you can literally put sensors on people and put them in different areas and see how their stress response is. But that takes really good researchers and needs to be reproducible. Otherwise, you have junk science. So, uh, it. But there are already so many interesting pointers that there is something wrong there. Yeah.
And also the presence of nature.
Oh yeah.
I stumbled onto some articles that were talking about that, about how architecture makes us feel and what psychological impact it has on us. And studies showed that colors and the presence of nature and ornaments and all of those details that we see in the facade, they have a huge impact on our psyche. So there is elements that show that a beautiful, ornate, maybe not the most ornated building in the world, but like a building with some detail have uh, has a sorry have a nice impact on us.
Yeah.
And all, yeah,
And it's really funny because also you probably know Barbican Center in London, and people are very, yeah, well, many people find it very ugly, but people who find it beautiful, I think a lot of them find it beautiful because there's so much greenery there, and you have the water, and that really takes the edge off, let's say, the brutalism, just the concrete facades. If if you would take away all the greenery from the Barbican Center and the water, I really wonder how many people would still find it attractive and would
Yeah.
find it special. And it's yeah, you can make people very angry very fast by by dunking on the Barbican Center. But I really think that nature is so important that even the most inhospitable places you can make more beautiful by it. And what I find uh, oh, kind of funny is that how they're building all these vertical forests now by Stefano Boeri, the Italian architect who built this Bosco Verticale in Milan, and now he has multiple towers in Holland as well. Because in Holland they're like, oh my god, they all drool over these trees on towers, but they forget the immense maintenance costs and the immense extra weight that needs to be carried by those towers, all extra concrete, probably offsetting the tiny bit of extra CO2 in those plants by, a manifold. So it's, yeah. But the point is, it does work because people see the trees and they're like, oh my goodness, trees in a building, that's revolutionary.
Yeah.
It's just not the most practical way. Maybe you could also like build a nice park, for example. Uh, and I agree, it is novel, but will it sustain? Will it last for a long time? But yeah, so greenery does work, and that's also why architects hide their renders, their artist impressions behind all this
Yeah.
greenery, because it works. But the funny thing is that you can bring nature in a building with proportions, detail, and ornament, and you will get a building that almost feels like a part of nature. And I think that's why I always like classical buildings in a natural setting because it goes together so well. It's so harmonious, and it's like sometimes like it's an enrichment of nature to have a little temple or a little bridge, one of those Palladian bridges in, like, for example, in Prior Park in Bath. It just enriches the natural landscape, um, which is interesting because isn't nature the peak of beauty? I think it's this little disruption that's still harmonious can make it even more beautiful. But yeah,
And I
so
think that makes a nice transition to a point I wanted to talk with you about is the subject of simplicity. Because, as you said, with the towers in Milan, it's an incredibly complex building. Like
yeah,
it's like an engineering marvel. It's very complex. The the maintenance of the building is like very, very hard to do, and it, it it asks the question, why are we building so complicated when we have very simple solutions?
yeah,
And this is where I want to talk about like vernacular architecture, about the solutions that the people themselves, not trained architect, but people have come up or on their own to live in their specific environment, and lessons that we can learn from that, because I think that's
yeah.
also a very interesting topic.
That's true. I think so. While nowadays we have made it a requirement for ourselves to build difficultly in it, well, like, yeah, complicate things because we have all those very stringent norms, building norms, and environmental demands of our buildings that just drive up costs, make it more expensive. Of course, makes it also more lowers carbon and everything, but it also leads to buildings that are now here in Holland. They build buildings that are so well insulated that they cannot get the heat out without an air conditioning. The heat is trapped inside, and people are overheating. They're putting like blankets in front of the windows to keep out the heat, and they're just suffering, or they literally go on a holiday just to be out of the house.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, it's really bad in some ways, and but that's just like the ordinary complication of all these buildings. We also have like these extremely all the modernist buildings that are very over engineered with all these cantilevers, all these interesting structures to do something that is architecturally interesting. according to the architect.
Yeah.
People think that traditional architecture is very expensive, but it's actually very basic and very simple to make, because normally it's just a box. Like, I've never seen a traditional building that has to be kept up by this whole, this construction to tilt it in a weird angle, and um, it's very simple, and most of the money will probably go into craftsmanship and maybe some ornament and maybe some decorations. But for the rest, it's a very simple construction, just a box with a roof. And so yeah, it's and that is with vernacular architecture is about as simple as it gets, because it's made by people over centuries, and they have ingrained it with all this local knowledge of what climate they're in, how to react to the climate, how to build buildings using local materials that adapt to local circumstances, which is, yeah, finding technical solutions over centuries with a very limited a very limited set of tools, and they did it really well.
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, I mean, many of those buildings still stand to this day, and then you're in like a little German village with those half timbered homes, and of course now they're extra insulated, and like the that all still works, but those buildings are still going, and they're still being built, half timbered homes, and there's enormous wisdom there that is, I think, not respected enough and not used enough.
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, we don't need to stay in an eternal 19th century and always keep building the same kind of architecture, but um, at least learning from it would be a great first step, I
And
think.
you talked about the wind towers in Iran, in Persia. That's a
Yeah.
nice way of controlling the heat, the sun. Or when you go to south of Spain, Andalusia or Morocco, for example, you have those courtyard houses that can act as a very cool environment in a very harsh weather, very harsh sun. So yeah, the wisdom, I think it's interesting as as an architect and professional of construction to see those solutions and take the best out of them, and also apply our modern good solution that we developed today. And now let's say, I'm someone who wants to learn about those classical ways of building. I'm someone who wants to learn to understand old cities, understand that wisdom that we can see everywhere, that we yearn for. Um, how can I? How can I? Where can I start? On the vastness of this information, where can I start? Where can I find something that can maybe put me in the right direction?
Well, there is of course a lot of there's books, but the problem with those books is like, which book do you start to read with? Start to read. There are YouTube videos, of course, but then again, like, how do you structure them? So this is actually a problem. There's very few universities where they're teaching this. In Europe, I think there's only one master's program where they teach classical architecture, and one sort of track in Norway where students can do their own graduation project and learn classical. And for the rest, you have more and more schools in the United States teaching it. But for the rest, there's only summer schools
Mm.
where you can go. So there's more and more summer schools of traditional architecture and urbanism all across Europe, and also now in the United States and in Mexico, where they're teaching this. In Brazil, there was also one. So it's really a growing movement. But I was also aware of this project problem, and I started my own academy with Aesthetic City Academy. It's just a kind of an online, on-demand way to learn this from the comfort of your home, because going to the summer school is, I think, the most, was until now, the most, let's say, accessible way to learn this, because, well, it's a short program. You can do it over summer, and it's not like a full architectural course. So if you don't have all the time, you can learn a lot there. But still, you have to get the tuition. It's like between 500 and €1,000, depending on where you
Yeah.
go. You have to sometimes buy a ticket if you come from the States. Well, it costs another €1,000, or if you go, to other country, it costs a couple of €100 at least. Then you need housing, so that can also cost like 500, 600, or even more, depending on where you are. So that can easily be like 1,500 or €2,000 or dollars to do a summer school. And we made it super affordable, so everybody can follow it. So that's a little bit of a plug there, but because we can, the point is, who else is gonna do it? Where can you learn it? And we wanted to give a little introduction. Of course, we cannot teach the full thing, we cannot teach everything, but we just wanted to make one little opportunity to learn as much as they can from the comfort of their own home, and also actually do exercises to draw architecture, to learn more about their built environment, and to understand these principles. But then, of course, I think some really great books are The Art of Classic Planning by Nir Burras. And by the way, they have a great academy too, the Classic Planning Academy, which I also followed, which I can also advise. It's they have like classes online which are by a live teacher instead of just on demand, but really, really great to learn as well. But yeah, I think those are the new offerings. We're building our own institutions because universities don't teach it. So
Yeah.
what are we going to do?
Well, we'll make it ourselves. So maybe that's the reason why you launched your channel, is because you were tired of waiting.
Exactly.
Dragon.
And for me, it was also, I wanted to learn more about it, and I was frustrated that I didn't learn at the university. And for me, it's kind of like this kind of a quest of learning, and then also immediately teaching what I learn. And sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes things are not as accurate, or I learn like, hey, there's a nuance here. For example, I think my concrete video was maybe a little bit too pessimistic about the longevity of concrete, but I still think that there are problems there. And okay, even if a building lasts for 100 years, there's some chemical processes that are literally that are just happening, like carbonization of concrete, and there is just a limited lifetime of those buildings. But some of them can really stand for a very long time, and they still do. And especially with a very thick, very good cover of the concrete. It's a very thick depth of the concrete before the rebar. Buildings can last very long. But yeah, the point is, why does it take? Like we have this whole world of traditional architects, and it feels sometimes weird to be one of the earlier ones with a YouTube channel, because it was such an open door. Like, it's so logical to talk about this, but I don't know. It's interesting, but I'm really happy to share this, and because I really love the work of all these people, and they find it nice that I show their projects, and I like visiting them and filming those projects, and people watching the videos like learning about them. So it's kind of a win-win-win situation.
Yeah, I sure did. I learned a lot from your videos, and um, you were the first who openly said, as I know, you were the first who openly said that it's okay to love beauty. It's okay to seek it. And it was the first time where my modernist training was my modernist architect inside of my head was like, what are you doing? Why are you watching those videos? But I also have this classical architect in me that wanted to know more about this. And I think what I love most is that you're also promoting a lot of hope. It's not just, oh, it's doom and gloom, and we're all done for. It's like you presented projects that made it, that did it, and that works, and that's what I find really interesting, is that there is another way.
Yeah, and because it's really, especially on the internet, like there's definitely a bit of an undertone, or a clear um, yeah, there's you can very clearly notice there is some sort of a depressing, moody, yeah, hopeless vibe, let's say, on the internet,
Yeah.
and that we're all gonna, it's all doomed, and we're all gonna die, and it's gonna be terrible. But that's not the full, it's like it misses the optimist angle, and there is actually there is an alternative, and I think we should not just give up. We should try to improve things. And I sometimes also like lose hope when I walk around a whole district of a city here that has been ruined, and that's probably not going to be nice for another couple of decades when they start demolishing the stuff that has degraded.
Mm.
But it's kind of like a battle that takes longer than your own life probably, and you maybe you'll only see results in decades, but you just need to keep pushing. And well, because one day maybe another generation might enjoy it. And I think if you have the opportunity to spread hope, then you should, because that's better than just spreading doom and gloom. And people need some hope. And I think it's, I don't know, I don't really like just, I don't know, just being negative about things and not having any clear direction. Like, okay, there's a problem. Okay, what am I going to do about the problem?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, yeah, there needs to be some action in the direction of improvement. And I think what I find interesting is that I wonder, the regular architectural world, they really fully woken up yet to this? Because I do sometimes get like a nasty comment on YouTube, but I don't get like enormous attacks. Well, knock on wood, but it seems they're just ignoring it for now. And I just wonder, do they, yeah, do they know that like there is yeah, that there is kind of a stronger and stronger movement towards the alternative? I think it's because it's still such early days that there hasn't really been an awakening yet. But you can notice that people like Thomas Heatherwick are changing course because they notice the winds changing. And I think it would be, I think, yeah, it can go very fast as well. Suddenly, if I think if one or two big architecture firms suddenly start doing classical stuff,
Yeah.
then I think it will go very fast because a lot of other firms, it just follow.
Yeah. And
Yes.
I can tell you that young generation of architects, I'll talk about my generation, but when I
Yeah.
talk to my friends, and right now we're just like junior architects in some firms to gain experience, we're not happy with the way architecture seemed to be going. And I can say also, maybe it can be an interesting point of view that, I'm from Morocco, and I
Yeah.
plan to go back to it to have my architecture studio there. And Morocco and also Africa as a whole continent, they are in a time where, in a great expansion time,
Yeah.
with a lot of new cities going to be built, a lot of infrastructure, and more, at first we were repeating the mistakes of the West,
Yeah.
because we had this idea that the West was better, it was the way, modernism was the way, and slowly and more, we're getting a lot of appreciation to our traditions, our
Yeah.
old ways of building, that we had some wisdom there, that we have some very strong, in Morocco, we have some very strong weather, very harsh, very,
Yeah.
very strong, and we have to adapt to it. And it's clear that modern architecture, if we just repeat it, cannot respond to that. So
Yeah.
a lot of architects are choosing to go the other way. We have Atelier BE, who built the first earth pisé house in a regulated urban space in Marrakesh. We have Salim Aneji or Aziza Shaouni, which were two architects that rebuilt vernacular houses in the unfortunate houses that were destroyed in Al House with the earthquake there. So they rebuilt the house in a traditional yet modern way. So we have
Yeah.
that kind of huge uprising of architect who wants to go back to the roots and wants to express it.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we
That's
will
cool.
see a change.
I think, yeah. Also, you talked about the new generation, and I think there is a very clear sign that things are changing because there's so many young people now. I notice so much interest in the summer schools, so much interest in, well, because of the videos, of course, but also in this academy we do, and in the what is it? In the uh, yeah, like my Discord community, for example. There's a lot of young people who are building stuff with Minecraft and Roblox Studio. You know, like there's a whole video game inspired generation who are, they see beautiful, you know, games like Assassin's Creed and amazing virtual environments where all this beauty is possible, and then they enter the real world and like, why is this so ugly? So there's this, they're like, well, why can't we, you know, like I can build it in Roblox, why can I build it in real life? And they want to learn more about it, and they uh strongly gravitate towards these traditions. And I think it's, maybe some do it out of nostalgia, some just because they like it better, you know. It's very simple, I just like it better.
Mhm.
And I think the ideological, the strength of the ideological, yeah, uh, influence of modernism is waning, because I think the baby boomer generation is still very, I think they're most pro modernism because, yeah, they grew up with this idea of that is progress and that's the future. But the new generations, they see what horrific places that has led to, and they see, well,
Mhm.
maybe there's an alternative way. So there is, they are, yeah, they don't really care that much about modernist architecture. So I think with this new generation, there's going to be a major shift. Only I think the universities will be too late to catch up on it, and that is, well, a responsibility then, I think, for new players to jump in that hole until universities start to see, oh, maybe we should course correct.
Yeah.
What I find, what I cannot understand is why universities don't teach traditions or teach classical architecture, or at least offer it, because it's just such a large part of our architectural heritage,
Yeah.
and it can still be used for modern buildings. You know, you can still mix it, and it could even lead to very exciting new types of buildings. But it's also just fair to have to offer all the ways of view. It's very. They always say, yeah, we're very tolerant of all these ideas, but in how can you be tolerant of ideas if you reject one idea outright? You know, yeah, it's not tolerant at all. It's just saying you're tolerant but not being it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
the idea of letting go of the past.
yeah, but the point is, yeah, they don't see that the past is a repository of useful ideas that you can use for a better future, and you can recombine them. You know, like there's so many new styles that could be invented. Like I saw a beautiful Twitter or X thread on Greco-futurism. You know,
Mm.
there's this whole there's this whole there are so many cool styles and types of architecture that could be unlocked and could be developed, but that aren't, because there is a whole avenue closed off.
Yeah. But we are kind of seeing that in design as well. People are tired. If I take the example of cars, we have uh, the pinnacle of modernist car is the Tesla. It's a very sleek, very simple design, no buttons, just a screen. Everything is tactile, and the majority of people hate it. They 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 feel the need to have buttons, to have cogs, to have
Yeah.
things to play with, and we can see it making a return. Like we see retro inspired cars, we see more functional design with a bit more buttons. We see like industrial design is coming back to a more um, w-
Yes,
just
textile.
not complicated, yeah, tactile, with returning back to what really worked in the past and bringing it
Yeah.
fusing it with what we have today.
Exactly, like the focus that is the strong focus on touch screens and everything digital is people like knobs and people like direct access. But I think the case of Tesla, there are some odds that that we won't even need to touch the steering wheel any longer in a couple of years. So then the screen just literally becomes a TV. I think that was their whole philosophy behind it. But indeed, I see. I think it was Hyundai with their super retro electric models.
Yeah.
One of like the black station car. I mean, I would want that car. It's so cool.
And Renault is doing it as well. Like they took the old design of the R6 and made it a retro futuristic model that is available right now. And when you can see it in the street of Paris, and those are very colorful cars. And yeah, it will be interesting also to speak about the subject of colors, maybe as the final section.
That's very good topic because everything is losing color. It seems like everything is becoming sad, gray, beige. And I mean, if you just look at pictures of like the past. I mean, from McDonald's to to cars, everything was so colorful, and now everything is getting gray and black. And you see those graphs where you see the number of colors.
Oh, I'll put it on the screen. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is true, and I think in architecture we see it as well. More and more cold colors. Well, I think maybe we need brighter colors. It's like the same with the medieval filter in a lot of movies, where they put the gray, blue, the bluish dirt filter over all those.
Yeah.
Then make look as if it's, and then you look at medieval city, like films from medieval times, or about the medieval times from the 60s and 50s, and everything is super colorful, which was probably more accurate to how it really was. But in architecture also, I think warmer colors are more liked than colder colors. And I think in Sweden you have those beautiful Swedish grace buildings with all those pastel colors, and in Athens they have the beautiful yellow hues and a bit of pink here and there. And I think maybe also in Poundbury you see some new homes with those beautiful pastel colors. I think it's important to introduce a little bit of extra color, but I think it's just very it depends of course on the country where you are. But isn't Morocco where you have the Blue Village?
Yeah, in Chefchaouen in the mountains, you have Blue Village, and also Marrakesh is very orange. That is white. Casablanca is another color. It's also in Lisbon. Lisbon, they have really bright colors: red, yellow, sometimes white.
And the tiles.
Yeah, the tiles. Yeah, that's
It's
an interesting thing.
it's I think just what the problem is nowadays is that if you're gonna build mostly with glass and concrete, well, they're either gray or a bit of bluish, but they're exactly that color that is taking over everything. So we just need to clad a little bit less with concrete, and but I do see some cool projects with like you can do amazing things with terracotta tiles.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest misunderstandings with my channel and me and my philosophy is that they think that I want to go back to the past or back to some eternal 19th century with, I don't know, endlessly mass-produced classical buildings. What I really want is that we get so many good architects who really understand the language of past architecture, like understand the principles behind traditional architecture, that they can apply those principles to create new types of buildings that are super interesting and innovative, like that we get new styles again, like a new kind of, maybe a new kind of Art Deco, for example, or a new Art Nouveau, and to blend those styles and true creativity with those styles. But for that, you need to understand classical proportions, because that's your rule book to play by. And if you don't follow those rules, well, that's the whole point of modernism, that you don't need to follow the rules. But if you follow those rules and make new things with it, that's still creative and still innovative. Only you're not like let free totally like a toddler riding on the walls, like do whatever you want. It's all okay.
Yeah.
That's not how, like, it's, it is ultimate freedom, but ultimate freedom, is not always the best for everyone, because that means that someone's freedom limits someone else's freedom. And I think the same is true with buildings. Like, we had some rules, like, this is what you tend to do, like, use this rule book. Within this rule book, you do whatever, but don't like just ignore the rules, because you get chaos. And you
Yeah.
get these buildings that are not humble. They all fight for attention. But with modernism, it's like, no, you are the king. You can do whatever you want as long as someone pays for it. Everything is okay. And it reduced the civility and the kind of mutual respect of those buildings. And it doesn't come from a place of humbleness, but of arrogance.
Yeah.
And
Ego.
yeah, exactly. And the egos of the architect can be inflated endlessly to build whatever they want and impose that on other people, and, well, ruin their day with an ugly building that people have to see every day of their life for 50 years if they live opposite of it. And they don't have skin in the game because they don't live opposite of it themselves. They hire they rent traditional offices, and they often live in traditional houses themselves. So, there is hypocrisy there, and a sort of egoistic behavior that I think, isn't really ethical or correct.
Mm. And yeah, I think I'm pushing for the same thing. I think with my channel, I want to make architecture more accessible, and also
Yeah.
push for a more local architecture. Because
Yeah.
when you go to another country, the first thing you want to experience is the food and the architecture. I mean,
Yeah.
those two are the primary. When you come to Paris, you don't go to like to La Défense, to the
Yeah.
new very modern neighborhood. You go for the center. You go to see the Louvre. You go to see the old Paris. When you go to Lisbon, when you go to Morocco, when you go to any country, you want to see the very special places.
Yeah.
What makes the culture there.
Exactly.
And
And
maybe
yeah.
it's what we can hope for. It's maybe a return to those more local expression of architecture, which is the result of the environment and not the other way around.
Exactly, the true richness of all those local differences, because that's the nice thing. We don't only have differences over time in style. We also have differences between countries, and all these different cultures who develop their own unique types of architecture, which is super exciting. It's like, every country you go to is like a new planet. It's like you're in Star Wars and you drop down with your ship and there's a whole new civilization. It's so cool, and it's such a shame that everything becomes the same.
Yeah. And here's to fight against it. Well, Ruben, I appreciate you a lot. Thank you so much for the discussion today. It was amazing.
Yeah, thank
And
you so much for inviting me.
yeah, well, with pleasure. I can spend two 2 or 3 hours more talking about it because, well, let's face it, we're really passionate about it. But
Yeah.
now I would say it's your time. Where can people go to find out
Oh,
more about you and what you do?
yeah. So I have my website, of course, theaestheticcity.com. You have my YouTube channel, of course. Just type in The Aesthetic City, and you'll find it. And my X page, of course, same thing there. Just type it in, you'll find it. And of course, if you want to learn about all this stuff and you're interested in following the course, we have that available until, well, about end of July. So I can give you a link where you can go, and we also have a discount for if you wanna if you wanna join. So yeah, I think that would be really great to see you in there.
Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please drop a like and subscribe to this channel. It helps a lot. You can find my other videos right there, and see you next time.